Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric here with Iraq Veteran 8888. Today, I've got another Gun Gripe episode for you, and we're going to be talking today about this girl in Scotland that defended herself with these knives against this attacker. Okay. Now, there are some different versions of this story, and we're going to kind of go over all the different perspectives of it. But this is wild, and this is tied into guns because we've always talked about on the channel so many times how, in various parts of the world where gun ownership is a very difficult thing to take part in, right? Like, it's very hard to defend yourself with a firearm, much less own one. It opens up the door for more knife crime. Like, you've looked at all these crazy knife crime statistics in the UK, right? And you've seen all these situations where all of these, especially immigrants, are using various, knives to attack people, and they're going around in mobs and things like that. And it creates a very criminal-rich environment because people are not able to defend themselves. And when you live in essentially a giant gun-free zone, it creates a lot of pandemonium. And that's what the story really does beckon to. And I want to kind of discuss it a little bit because it's really been going around like wildfire. And I'm pretty sure you guys have your own thoughts as well, which I'd like to know in the comment section below. Before we get started, I would like to thank our friends at Sonoran Desert Institute for supporting today's video. If you are looking for a career in the gunsmithing world, they're definitely your go-to source. They've got some amazing distance learning programs, awesome curriculum, really great instructors, just killer programs that'll put you on your path to being a gunsmith, running an FFL. They have some drone programs if you want to learn how to fly drones for various purposes. You can do real estate photography, so many cool things that they do. They've got a bunch of amazing programs. Check them out, SDI, Sonoran Desert Institute, and tell them that Eric over at Iraq Veteran 8888 sent you. Big shout out to them for being a long-term supporter of the channel. So depending on where you read this story, of course, the mainstream media from all around the world is going to report this story a little bit different depending on where you read it. Of course, like some of the more left-wing outlets are going to say that they were being, let's just say, they were brandishing knives and going around and threatening people and things like that. And of course, the police have charged this girl, who I believe is only 14 years old, with some crime of carrying knives in Scotland, which you can't even have a gun to protect yourself, right? It is a known fact that there are these rape mobs going around and trying to rape young girls and commit crimes against all sorts of various people, right? They know that they can do that with impunity because no one can protect themselves. You certainly cannot have a gun. The law enforcement is on the side of the immigrants. And to make matters worse, you can't even have a knife. So, they make even carrying a piece of cutlery to be difficult. But do you think the criminals don't have knives and possibly even guns? Do you think the criminals can't just bunch up into gangs of marauders and go around and carry out their will against the innocent populace? Of course they can. So depending on where you hear this story, you're going to hear some varying, opinions on how this was handled. But the girl has been charged with a crime for carrying these knives. Now, she was able to thwart an attack. Now, again, depending on where you hear the story, they're going to say, oh, well, it was an innocent old man and blah, 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 this and that. And then other outlets are going to, report that she was being sexually assaulted in the process and happened to have these knives and protect herself. What you want to believe is completely up to you. I believe, that yes, she was carrying these knives because she cannot rely on her own government to protect her because her own government has sided with the immigrants and people like that, right? The law enforcement, they seem to just not care about self-protection. They would rather, react to a crime after it's already been committed rather than try to stop a crime in the act, especially if it involves, an immigrant. And that's a very dangerous place to be. Imagine being a citizen of your own country. You're born there. You would think the law enforcement is on your side and they're going to go out of their way to do something to help you. But the citizens are having to resort to more drastic measures, right? Many of the citizens are law-abiding people. They know they're not supposed to carry knives, but what are they supposed to do? They can't have a gun. They cannot protect themselves. They're in a giant gun-free zone. They're in a victim creation zone is what they really are. And they can't even have a knife to protect themselves. What are they supposed to do when their own government will not support them, protect them, help them in any sort of way? Okay? I mean, what do you do? Do you allow a gang of people, if you're a young girl, to rape you at the age of 14, and that's just, you're supposed to just accept that's okay? So it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. My view of it is that this is a civil rights issue overall. Now, I know the UK looks at self-defense rights far differently than the way we view it here in the United States. And dare I say that there are some places in the U.S. where if you protect yourself, they're going to absolutely throw the book at you in any way they can, because the courts and the law system in certain states can be very, let's just say, difficult on gun owners who exercise their right to protect themselves. Or even if you brandish a firearm and prevent something from happening, they're still going to throw the book at you depending on the jurisdiction and where you're at. And that can even come down to individual cities, right? I'm not going to use Georgia as an example because Georgia is a pretty good state for that. But there are some states where, yeah, if you're inside the city and you happen to use a firearm to protect yourself, especially if it's in a jurisdiction where there's really strict carry protocol and, let's just say, really strict licensing requirements, yeah, they're going to throw the book at you, even if you are following the proper protocol and you have proper permits and you're carrying it the way you're supposed to and everything like that. It doesn't matter. They will always try to go after you in some cases, depending on the state and sometimes the city that you're talking about. This isn't like that. This is where, like, in the entire bosom of the entire UK, you cannot carry a firearm for self-protection. You can't carry a knife for self-protection. You can't carry a billy club or a stick for self-protection. I mean, we have essentially the entire bosom of Western civilization, right, was born out of that area, right? You look at our entire legal system that we follow today, it is based on British law. It is based on that old school British law, right? It may not be the most perfect system, but we've found through various studies of human behavior and various studies of government and institutions that their law system, despite having some flaws, is fairly good. So we based our American legal system off of the British legal system because for so many years it seemed to be a pretty solid overall system, right? So the problem is their laws are nothing like they are here, okay? They are actually, handicapped very much to be able to protect themselves from criminals. So I wanted to share this video to show you just how crazy things can really get in other parts of the world where we do not have the right to protect ourselves. The citizens in the UK do not have the right to protect themselves with a firearm, and these types of situations are what you see happen when you allow the government to have a monopoly on violence. All right, there's two extremes to that. One is you give the government a monopoly on violence, and they use that monopoly on violence against you, the citizen, to exact tyranny against you. All right. The other extreme is that they have a monopoly on violence and they simply do nothing with it and they allow criminals to run rampant. That seems to be the bearing action that is happening in the UK. Now, they are using threats of their monopoly on violence to arrest people for even the tiniest infractions of saying negative things about the immigrants or saying negative things about this group of people or that group of people. So they're engaging in extreme forms of censorship that include them coming to your home and questioning you on an individual post you made on social media. Imagine a world where you cannot even protect yourself from your own government. You can't protect yourself from a criminal. Anything they say that could be a crime is a crime. Just like the KGB, right? They say, you show me the man and I'll show you the crime. That's what's happening in the UK right now. They can literally make anyone a criminal for any reason at any time. And with this strict censorship and them coming to your front door and questioning you and in some cases arresting you over a social media post, imagine how quickly they would try to do something like that here if we didn't have the Second Amendment, if we didn't have the checks and balances, if we didn't have some form of resistance to not allow the government to have a monopoly on violence, right? The anti-gunners here, they always love to tell the story of how, guns should be restricted and only the police should have guns and this and that and all this sort of fallacies that make no logical sense. But what they fail to always recognize, not even what they fail to recognize, what they actually purposely omit from the equation is that the Second Amendment here in the U.S. is a check and balance against a tyrannical government having the absolute way of the world over you, in any way they want. It keeps you from being a victim of the tyranny of unchecked government and unchecked monopolization of violence. And that's essentially what the Second Amendment safeguards against, is keeping you from being a victim of government violence and having an ability to say no, giving you a choice. You can say what you want and then have the tools to back up what you say and defend what you say and defend what's yours and defend your rights and defend your livelihood. That is what's important about the Second Amendment. So don't let the anti-gunners get it twisted. You know, the UK, like the situation they're dealing with, they don't even have not even an iota of what we have in the ways of self-protection and a legal system that actually backs up their ability to defend their life and liberty, right? So I want you to look at this situation with this young girl who's now hemmed up on charges over some cutlery for defending herself. And I want you to think about that the next time you think about supporting an anti-gun bill, the next time you think about supporting gun control, the next time you think about spewing some anti-gun rhetoric because you just don't know the actual facts. I want you to think about that really hard and think that that could be you. That could be your daughter, you know, being forced to protect herself with a piece of rusty cutlery and then getting charged at the age of 14 over something that she should have had an adult with a gun protecting her, all right? Or she should have had, you know, an ability to, you know, defend herself and wasn't. Her government failed her because they failed to give her the ability, the tools, the rights, you know, the responsibilities to defend herself in that moment. So anyway, food for thought, y'all. Let me know down in the comment section what you think. I would love to know. Many more videos on the way. We've got a lot of stuff coming up. I'm about to head out to the range and shoot a whole bunch of stuff, so I'm waiting on the sun to come up. It's still early here, so waiting on our lighting. Okay, but lots more videos on the way, lots of stuff coming. Thanks so much. We'll see you soon.